The redistricting process is the allocation of power, is where the census numbers from the 2020 census are used, are analyzed, are broken down to show exactly where voters live. Not only are those numbers used to allocate federal resources, but for our purposes, most importantly for our purposes, they're used to allocate political lines for boundaries for political districts, where your city council person is elected, where your school board member is elected, all the way up to where your congressperson is elected. Those census numbers are used to allocate persons into specific districts to show where voters live. The impact of redistricting is directly related to power. It is the allocation of power. It is the allocation of who represents you. And why this is so important is that this is only done every 10 years. So think about it this way. If we don't get it right this cycle, if we are not able to draw fair, equitable maps that fairly represent minority voters, we won't have another opportunity to do this until 2031. That's how important this process is. And how it directly impacts voters, specifically voters of color, the voters that we represent. Where you live is directly tied to where you completed the census at. Once you complete that census, the Census Bureau processes it, and you are allocated to a certain precinct, you're allocated to a certain parish, other states it's counties, to a certain city. And all of those districts, for the most part, except for judicial districts, have to have equal numbers of population. So those districts are divided up so that, let's say you're in a city your city has 5 council persons. Each of those 5 council persons must represent an equal number of people. So you can't have one council person representing 10,000 people and another one representing 20,000. So those census numbers are used to draw those lines so that in a city or parish or in a state, those population numbers are close to equal as possible. Racial gerrymandering is when a map is drawn to have a specific impact to directly disadvantage a group of people based on their race. And this whole process is not about guaranteeing that a Black person is going to be sent to Congress. That's not what this is about. This is about guaranteeing that the voters of color in that district have an opportunity to elect their candidate of choice to Congress. That candidate can be a Black person, but it can also be someone who's white, Asian, Hispanic. It's about, as long as those voters have an opportunity to elect their candidate and that candidate has an opportunity to be successful in that district, that's what our work is about in all of the states that we're working in. From the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 until the Supreme Court's Shelby County versus Holder decision in 2013, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division blocked nearly 150 proposed changes to voting practices and policies in Louisiana on the grounds that they discriminated against Black voters or diluted Black voting strength. All of that was pursuant to Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. Without Section 5, jurisdictions that have a long history of discrimination in voting, like many of the entire state, but many other parishes that we work in, they are able to close polling hours, reduce the number of polling venues. If we had the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, none of these changes could even be enacted. That's how important this is to our work. That's how important is this process, that we get the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed, that Section 5 be restored to its previous power, to its previous glory, so that organizations like LBF have a tool to get these maps, to get these practices struck down before they're ever even enacted.